Okay, picture this. It's a typical Saturday evening in Nakasero. You know, one of Uganda's most upscale, quiet neighborhoods. Suddenly, that quiet is totally shattered. You've got the roar of heavy vehicle engines, the glaring flash of security lights, and heavily armed operatives completely surrounding a residence. Nobody goes in, nobody comes out. But here's the kicker. This isn't just any house. This is the home of Anita Among, the Speaker of Parliament, and historically, one of Uganda's absolutely most powerful political figures. Welcome to this explainer, where we are going to unpack what is rapidly turning into Uganda's biggest political story of the year. So naturally, waking up the morning after that raid, there was really only one question dominating every political conversation across the country. Has the state finally turned against Anita Among? I mean, for years, this is a leader who appeared completely untouchable. We're talking insulated by power, protected by the system, and backed by political alliances at the very highest levels of government. So to suddenly see security agencies inside her home boxing up documents, it's a massive shock to the system. How exactly does someone that protected find investigators literally at her doorstep? Let's break it down. Let's get into part one, the unexpected security raid. Listen, we aren't just talking about a couple of local beat cops showing up with a search warrant. This was a massive, highly coordinated joint security operation. You had the police, military intelligence, CID detectives, and UPDF officers all deployed at once. Witnesses were describing this overwhelming presence, heavily darting the entrances, searching vehicles, and forensic teams digging through documents and electronic records for hours on end. And the craziest part? It reportedly wasn't even just her Nakasero home. Properties associated with her in Kololo and Kigo were allegedly targeted as well, with teams hunting for financial records tied to suspected illicit enrichment and money laundering. There were even reports that 2 of her staff members were detained for questioning right then and there. The sheer symbolism of this contrast is just devastating. You have a leader whose status was fiercely protected suddenly under intense investigation, with our properties literally sealed off. You have to understand, in Uganda's political power system, raids with this level of firepower and coordination, they are never just random administrative procedures. They are a message, and the message here is glaring. Protection might be weakening, political alliances could be collapsing, and someone who was previously untouchable is now visibly vulnerable. Now, as news of the raid spread, you can imagine the rumors absolutely exploded online. The biggest claim circulating was that Anita Among had effectively been placed under house arrest, with people reporting that her movement was being heavily restricted by security personnel. Now, we need to be clear here. There is still no official government confirmation of a formal house arrest. But let's be real. In this kind of political environment, psychological warfare and rumors spread like wildfire, way faster than official press releases. Even without the official stamp, just the image of a dominant speaker surrounded by state security forces creates an enormous, undeniable political shockwave. Which brings us to part 2, investigating illicit wealth claims. So what actually triggered all those troops showing up? Well, the raid didn't just fall out of the sky. The immediate precursor was an official probe by the Inspector General of Government, or the IGG. The IGG confirmed they had received a formal petition demanding a deep dive into Among's wealth declarations, her assets, and her lifestyle. Specifically, the petition accuses her of breaching Uganda's Leadership Code Act. Basically, this boils down to allegations of massive, unexplained wealth accumulation and a failure to properly declare what she actually owns. And the scale of this wealth? We're talking about billions of shillings. Over the last little while, Anita Among had really become the very public face of elite extravagance in Uganda. We're talking luxury convoys, incredibly lavish public donations, and of course, the infamous Rolls-Royce controversy. When reports came out that she had imported a luxury Rolls-Royce Cullinan worth billions of shillings, it triggered absolute nationwide outrage. It threw Parliament's finances under a microscope and turned everyday public debate into a loud demand for accountability. Right in the middle of all that public anger, the IGG steps up with a very powerful, very public directive. They urged Ugandans to, quote, continue reporting public officials displaying unexplained wealth and flamboyant lifestyles. For anyone watching Ugandan politics, the timing of that statement was impossible to ignore. It felt directly targeted at those highly visible displays of luxury we just talked about. The state wasn't just quietly investigating behind closed doors anymore. They were making a very public call to action. All right, let's zoom out a bit for part 3, a shift in political power. To really grasp how serious this is, we have to look past the money and the cars, because the most dangerous part of this crisis for Anita Among is deeply political. Just days before these security raids went down, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba publicly endorsed Jacob Oboth-Oboth for Speaker of Parliament for the upcoming 2026 to 2031 term. And this endorsement, it completely sent shockwaves through Uganda's political class. Why? Because Anita Among is currently sitting in that chair. Yet Uganda's emerging power center is out there openly, publicly, laying the groundwork for a future without her. It is a textbook example of elite distancing. And when you step back and look at the timeline, the speed of this is just staggering. Days prior, the IGG gets the wealth petition. In the background, there are reports of incredibly tense State House meetings involving President Museveni and Among, as the pressure cooks. Then, just before the raid, General Muhoozi drops his shocking endorsement for a rival. And then, bam, Saturday evening, multi-agency security teams are storming her Nakasero residence. It's like a row of dominoes falling all at once, signaling a rapid, total collapse of political cover. This leads us right into Part 4, Uganda's political succession battle. This whole story has honestly outgrown the initial corruption allegations. What we are witnessing right now is the anatomy of a political collapse, and it's following a very, very specific playbook in Uganda's power system. It almost never starts with handcuffs. It starts with signals. You see elite distancing, allies quietly stepping back, rivals suddenly getting promoted. Then, the official investigations launch. After that comes the physical raids. And finally, that jarring realization that the ultimate protection you relied on is just gone. As Uganda's system prepares for broader transition and succession, alliances are shifting fast, and formerly untouchable figures can suddenly find themselves completely isolated. Now, actually, let me pause here because it's crucial we state the facts neutrally. No court has convicted Anita Among of corruption. She remains, right now, one of Uganda's most influential figures, and as we said, those formal house arrest claims are unconfirmed. However, in the ruthless world of political optics and influence, the damage might already be irreversible. Just a few months ago, she looked absolutely invincible. Today, her wealth is under a microscope, her allies are sweating, and her potential replacements are being openly paraded. And that brings us to the most critical takeaway of this explainer. It's really no longer a question of whether she's under pressure. The real question you have to ask yourself, especially after looking at the raids, the timeline, and those shifting alliances, is this. Is Uganda's political establishment actively dismantling her power from the inside? Because history shows us, once the system pulls its protection, things unravel incredibly fast. We're going to be watching this space very, very closely.